I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we are grateful to you for organizing today's event. And we thank the delegation of Venezuela for its leadership in negotiating the UNGA Resolution 73/127, declaring the 24th of April to be the International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. It is symbolic that today the very situation surrounding Venezuela is demonstrating the challenges facing the mechanism of multilateral diplomacy. We wish to recall that in the aftermath of the Second World War, we created the United Nations and stipulated in its charter the key elements for a polycentric world order, as well as the main principles and norms of international relations, the sovereign equality of states, and non-interference into their internal affairs. The prohibition of the use of force in international affairs without the support of the Security Council or other than in self-defense. Adherence to these principles is a decisive factor in international stability and security. The Russian Federation, along with like-minded countries, is calling for the strengthening of the multilateral basis of international relations and the global economy on the basis of universal norms of international law and the UN Charter. We are guided by the fact that this global organization remains the only universal global forum for continuous, open, and honest dialogue, so as to create a more stable and just architecture for international relations. Today, the global political landscape is changing dramatically. The political influence of the developing world is growing, and they're demanding that their hopes and aspirations be heard. However, the process of creating a polycentric peace system requires increased responsibility from the international community. We must make polycentric efforts the driving force for mutually beneficial and fruitful partnerships, leaving behind the philosophy of the balance of powers and jockeying for influence. To do so, we must cast aside our phobias, our stereotypes, and our various geopolitical games. We must respect each other's interests, and we must work together in the name of the future of all of humanity. However, efforts by states to bolster polycentric foundations are hindered by some players who are attempting to entrench their domination, calling into question the principle of civilized conduct. Their toolkit includes unilateral steps taken in circumvention of international law and the legitimate decision-making bodies, ripping up existing agreements and carrying out illegitimate measures. Examples that come to mind include the bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999, the occupation of Iraq in 2003, the flagrant manipulation of the Security Council's mandate in Libya in 2011, and attempts to overthrow the legal government in Syria and now in Venezuela. The founding principles of Middle Eastern peace process are being shaken, as is the JCPOA, as well as WTO obligations and agreements on climate and disarmament. The theoretical basis has appeared behind these steps, and serious challenges to the multilateral system of relations, attempts by single states to replace the system of international law with a set of rules-based world order. Particularly, these rules are a liberal interpretation of the legal norms for the benefit of a limited group of countries. As a result, the practical adoption decisions are taken by a coalition of the willing and under the guise of multilateralism. And then the rest of the states are invited to join along with these already agreed upon decisions. And those who don't want to are written off as those who are against multilateralism. Clearly, these attempts to hamper the polycentric world, to maintain the dominance for peaceful in global affairs is their goal. We have seen this in UNESCO and many other structures. We see them working to end this polycentric world. And at times, these attempts only lead to an increased potential for conflict in international affairs. Those who are in favor of these concepts need to be reminded that rules-based world order has never been mentioned in the UN Charter and cannot be a part of this charter. In fact, in Charter 1, there is, in the Charter's first article, there is a mention of the principle of international law. Of course, speaking about a radical weakening of the UN is a bit premature. Our organization has much fuel in the tank remaining. However, we need to increase its authority. Alongside the General Assembly, an important role must be played by the Security Council, which is a key instrument to support international peace. Alongside this global organization, we place great importance on such flexible mechanisms to develop collective consensus approaches to global affairs as the G20, for example, the BRICS, and the SCO. Over the past few years, the BRICS has become a fully fledged mechanism of strategic partnership on three main areas: politics and security, economics and finance, as well as culture. We note the positive role played by regional integration organizations underpinned by the principles of equality and mutual benefits. We note the Eurasian Economic Union, which is based on the norms and rules of the WTO. And we're working to include it in the Chinese project, the Silk Belt and Road project. The principle of voluntary participation and strict adherence to the UN Charter are also at the basis of the work of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Today, this organization is being transformed into a structure that can be very constructive in its contributions to solving many issues to bolster regional and international security. Sir, in conclusion, I wish once again to stress these irrefutable assertions. To support peace and security in a global level, we must ensure that we maintain international law, including the Charter of the United Nations. We must respect the state sovereignty of countries, and we critically must strive to cooperate and not to confront each other. We all know that every country in the world has the right to independently choose their own future without any interference into their domestic affairs. Positive results can be achieved by joining our efforts together. This is the only way for us to ensure a just, democratic, and harmonious world order. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of Russian Federation for his statement.